Right. You know how it is. You open that power bill and it's like, seriously,
Yeah.
am I supposed to understand this? It's like they're speaking another language. Kilowatt hours, peak demand. What does it all mean? Like, I need another degree just to pay this thing. But what if I told you figuring out this whole energy thing isn't actually rocket science? We're going to make it easy today, diving deep into those energy terms, the kind that make you go cross-eyed. We're talking kilowatts, kilowatt hours, the whole shebang. You with me? I'll admit, I used to think those two were basically the same. Like, what's the big deal, right?
It's a really common mix-up, but understanding the difference, that's huge. Think of it like speed and distance. Kilowatts, that's like how fast you're using energy right now, this second. Kilowatt hours, that's the total energy, like the whole trip.
Okay, now you're talking my language. So, like with my car, kilowatts would be like the horsepower, how much oomph it's got. And the kilowatt hours, that's more like the miles I drive, how much gas I burn through.
Exactly. And just like you wouldn't say your car gets, 60 miles per hour per day, you got to keep those energy terms straight too.
Yeah.
Once you do, you can really understand your power use. Maybe even save a few bucks while you're at it.
Music to my ears. So let's say I'm eyeing this amazing new espresso machine, a must-have, How do I use this kilowatt hour wisdom to make sure my electric bill doesn't go through the roof every time I need a caffeine fix?
Great question. You'd look for the espresso machine's power rating, probably listed in kilowatts. Let's say it says 2 kilowatt. That means when it's on, it's using energy at a rate of 2 kilowatts.
Okay, I'm following. But how does that translate to actual energy used, like in kilowatt hours on my bill?
That's where time comes into play. If you use that 2 kilowatt espresso machine for a whole hour, you just multiply, right? Power times time, so 2 kilowatt times 1 hour equals 2 kilowatt hours. That's how much energy used.
Got it. So a 2-hour latte making extravaganza would be 4 kilowatt hours. But let's be real, appliances aren't running at full blast nonstop, or are they?
You got it. That 2 kilowatt espresso machine, that's its peak power. Most appliances, they have different settings. Their power needs change. Take your washing machine. It uses way more energy for the wash cycle than just the rinse, right?
That makes sense. But how in the world do we figure out the actual energy used if it's always changing? Do I need to become like an energy accountant with a spreadsheet tracking every little thing?
This is where average power use comes in handy. Think of it like, when you check your speedometer, you might hit 70 on the highway for a bit, but then there's city driving, traffic lights, all that. Your average speed for the whole trip is going to be lower.
Right. Makes sense. So we're talking about the average power an appliance uses over time, not just those peak moments.
Exactly. And the good news is your energy bill, it usually just shows the total kilowatt hours you use that month. No need for minute-by-minute tracking, thankfully.
What a relief.
Yeah.
I can't help but picture a graph of my house's energy use throughout the day. It probably looks like a roller coaster with all the lights, appliances, everything going on.
You're probably not far off. You'd see those peaks in the morning, everyone getting ready, and then again in the evening. Dinner time, TV time, all that. Energy companies even have a name for it. They call them peak hours, highest demand.
Makes sense. Okay, so we're getting a handle on this kilowatt hour thing.
Yeah.
But how does all this connect to like solar panels and electric cars? That seems next level.
They might seem fancy, but it's the same principles at play. Take solar panels, for example. You see ads, they'll say something like 5 kilowatt system, right? That's talking about the maximum power those panels can generate, but only under perfect conditions, like ideal sunshine. Think of it like the top speed of your solar-powered car, not the average.
Got it. So it's like the potential, not what's actually happening all the time.
Exactly. Solar panels, just like those appliances, they don't have a constant output. Their energy production, it goes up and down throughout the day. It depends on how strong the sunlight is, if there are clouds, even the angle of the sun.
Ah, okay. So it's back to averages again. Got it.
Yeah.
But is there a way to guesstimate how much energy my panels might actually make on a normal day? Asking for a friend who's thinking about going solar. That friend is me, by the way.
There are definitely ways to get a good estimate. One common thing you'll hear in the solar world is peak sun hours. And that's not just about how many hours the sun's up. It's about those hours with really strong, consistent sunlight, perfect for making power.
Peak sun hours. Okay, got to add that to my energy vocab.
Yeah. It's a good one to know. Now, how many peak sun hours you get, that depends on where you live, the time of year, all that. But generally speaking, in a lot of places, you can figure for every kilowatt of solar panels, you'll get, on average, about 4 kilowatt hours in energy per day.
Let me see if I got this. So my imaginary 5 kilowatt system on a sunny day, with those peak sun hours doing their thing, we could be talking close to 20 kilowatt hours of energy. That's a lot of lattes from my 2 kilowatt espresso machine.
That's the idea, although you'll probably be using that solar energy for a bit more than just espresso.
True, very true. But still, it's pretty amazing to think about all that power from the sun. Speaking of power, what about home batteries? How do kilowatts and kilowatt hours fit into that whole battery storage picture?
Great point. Home batteries are getting more and more popular, right? You can store extra solar energy, use it later, even power your home if the grid goes down. And yep, understanding kilowatts and kilowatt hours is super important here too.
All right, lay it on me. I'm shopping for a home battery. What am I looking for in terms of kilowatts and kilowatt hours? What's going to give me the most bang for my buck, energy-wise?
Okay, so you're looking at home batteries, right? The big number they usually advertise, that's the kilowatt hour capacity. It tells you how much energy that battery can hold. Think of it like the size of your gas tank. Bigger is usually better.
Makes sense. More room to store that solar energy for when the sun's not out, or even send it back to the grid if that's an option.
Exactly. Now, the kilowatt part of the equation, that comes into play with the battery's power rating. That rating tells you how fast the battery can charge up, or, more importantly, how fast it can deliver energy when you need it.
So if there's a power outage, and I have a battery with a really high kilowatt rating, does that mean I can run everything in my house, like AC, espresso machine, the whole 9 yards, without even noticing?
That's what a lot of people think, but it's not always the case. A higher kilowatt rating does mean the battery can give you a big burst of power quickly, but it doesn't necessarily mean it can power everything for a long time.
Okay, so it's not just about raw power, it's about how long it lasts.
You got it. And that's where your kilowatt hour capacity comes in again. High kilowatt rating, that's like a sprinter, great for a short burst. High kilowatt hour capacity, that's more like a marathon runner, all about endurance.
I love that analogy. Really makes you think about finding that balance between the two, right? What's the right fit for your energy needs and habits?
Exactly. And speaking of balancing power and capacity, let's switch gears for a sec. Talk about electric vehicles, EVs. They're everywhere these days, and they rely on the same kilowatt and kilowatt hour principles we've been talking about.
Oh yeah, EVs. Those car commercials love throwing around terms like kilowatt motor and kilowatt hour battery. It's all starting to sound familiar, though.
That's great. You're making the connections. Just like with our other examples, knowing the difference between kilowatts and kilowatt hours is key to understanding EV lingo. You'll usually see both terms used to describe an EV. Like you might hear, this EV has a powerful 150 kilowatt motor and a long-range 75 kilowatt hour battery.
Okay, so break that down for me. What do those numbers actually tell me about how the car performs?
That kilowatt rating, the 150 kilowatts in our example, that's usually talking about the motor's power, how quickly the car can take off from a standstill. It's basically the EV version of horsepower, more kilowatts, faster acceleration.
So bigger number, more fun. Got it. What about that 75 kilowatt hour figure? That's all about the battery, right?
Exactly. The kilowatt hour capacity of the EV's battery, that's like the gas tank size in a regular car, tells you how far you can go on a single charge. Higher capacity, longer driving range, fewer stops to charge up.
Okay, so more kilowatts means a more exciting ride. Higher kilowatt hours means less range anxiety on road trips. It's all making sense.
You're getting it. You're practically fluent in energy now. But before we get carried away, we should probably address some common misconceptions about these terms. Believe me, even people who work in the energy field can sometimes get tripped up by the whole kilowatt hour thing.
Oh, I'm sure. I've definitely mixed them up myself in the past.
Yeah.
Lay those common blunders on me. What are some of the most common kilowatt conundrums you've seen?
One I hear all the time is people saying, my solar panels made 15 kilowatts of electricity yesterday.
Hold on. Something doesn't sound right there. It's like saying I drove 50 miles per hour yesterday. It's mixing things up, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're confusing the rate of energy with the total amount. They should be saying kilowatt hours, not just kilowatts.
Like we were talking about, kilowatts of the speed, kilowatt hours of the distance.
You got it. It's a small word change, but a big meaning difference.
Okay, what other kilowatt curveballs have you seen? Give me another one.
Well, I saw someone online asking if they needed to be making 3 kilowatt hours to run their dryer because the label said 3 kilowatts.
Oh no, they switched it around again. It's easy to see how that kind of thinking could really throw things off.
For sure. They were looking at the dryer's power rating, how much it could use at its max, but not the actual energy used, which depends on how long it runs.
Right. We got to factor in time, like you said, kilowatt hours equals kilowatts multiplied by time.
Exactly. That's the key takeaway here. And honestly, just understanding that one little equation can save people a ton of confusion, maybe even some money on their energy bills, too.
Absolutely. It's all about making those smart choices, like you were saying. Picking energy-efficient appliances, figuring out if solar makes sense, getting the right size battery. It makes a difference.
It really does. And that's what's so cool about this whole topic. It's not just about some abstract units of energy. It's about giving people the knowledge to actually impact their lives, even their wallets.
Love that.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, right? Especially when it comes to energy. So to everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has left you feeling energized and ready to decode those energy terms.
Absolutely. Next time you're using an appliance or charging your phone or just turning on a light, remember you're interacting with kilowatts and kilowatt hours. Once you get those, you can make smarter decisions about your energy use.
Maybe you'll even find yourself chatting about peak sun hours at your next dinner party. You'll be the most electrifying guest there.
Maybe not the life of the party, but hey, being energy savvy is pretty cool these days. It's about feeling empowered, not overwhelmed, and I think we did that today.
Totally agree. Thanks for joining us on this electrifying journey into the world of kilowatts and kilowatt hours. Until next time, stay curious.